Hey guys, welcome back to CLATapult's video series on the CLAT exam and specifically the logical reasoning section. Today we'll discuss how to break down a logical reasoning passage when you're given the same or you see the same for the first time. In our past videos, we've talked about the different questions that come in logical reasoning, but today we'll focus on how to read the passage itself independent of the questions. So a few pointers before we get started with this particular breakdown would be when you start with the logical reasoning section, I would advise, instead of just going serially, go with a passage that you're familiar with. You can easily take 5 to 10 seconds out to just quickly flip through the different passages in the question book so that you find out which topic resonates more with you or you find comparatively easier, and you can start with that. This will help you build confidence as and when you're going through the logical reasoning section, especially if logical reasoning is not one of your strengths. However, this does not mean that you completely ignore the passages that you're slightly unfamiliar with. I would rather urge you to increase your familiarity with the different subject areas, for example, medical passages, passages that deal with philosophy, literature, history, science generally, legal related passages. And you can do that by reading more in these different subject areas, right? This will help increase your familiarity. Now that that's been said, what do I mean by breaking down a passage? Reading a passage by itself for the very first time can help you figure out what can be the different possible answers to any of the questions that can be asked, even without looking at the question. So how do we do that? Very simply, it's called reading a passage smartly. So you can read a passage smartly by breaking it down and understanding the different elements of a passage. Now remember, in one of our earlier videos we talked about rules or guidelines for logical reasoning. One of them was thinking within the box. What is the box? The box is the passage itself. So when you're reading the passage, there'll be 3 types of statements or segments to a particular passage. The very first one would be facts or premises. These particular facts or premises are factual statements present in the passage, which can be either true or false. These are statements of fact and not opinion. So the author would usually indicate their premises or the background in which the passage is based, as well as some factual information to set the tone and context for the passage. After doing the same, the author would go on and look at the arguments that they are proposing on any given topic. So the second aspect of a passage would be the arguments therein. There could be 1 or 2 arguments or perhaps multiple arguments made by the author. Now understand that arguments would be statements not of fact but rather of opinion. The author would be pointing out their opinion on the facts and the circumstances. While yes, their arguments can be supported by further facts, the arguments themselves are statements of opinions which are not necessarily true or false. They're statements to which you can either agree or disagree. After putting out their arguments, the authors tend to end the passage with a conclusion. This wraps up the main idea of the passage, the core argumentation of the passage, and displays the way forward. Now these are the 3 elements that are given to you within the passage. But there are also 2 things that come beside these 3 themselves. Number 1 would be assumptions. Now assumptions come even before the passage is written. These are the information that must be true for the passage to make sense. Now the authors feel that, these kids who are going to read my particular passage or article are smart enough to know this information. So they don't explicitly state these assumptions. That's why these assumptions are called tacit or implicit assumptions. These come even before the passage is written. These are the basic information that need to be true for the passage to make sense. Now, after the assumptions are put forth and the passage is written with the 3 different prongs like we discussed, the last part of it, something that comes after the passage is written, would be inferences. This is the information that students or readers derive after reading the passage. So why is this breakdown important? You need to keep this in mind so that you can easily identify these different elements when reading the passage for the first or the second time thoroughly. When reading the passage, try and identify in the read itself what are the factual statements, what are the premises, and then what are the arguments of the author, and finally what are the conclusions. Once you've identified these different aspects, you'll easily be able to figure out what a possible and necessarily true assumption would be, and finally what information can be infer or derive from the passage. This will make your job much easier if you keep these different segments in mind while reading the passage and try and identify them, because all the questions ask just these information. They ask you to break down the passage in an MCQ format. So if you already know what a conclusion is, or say what an assumption could be, you can easily look at an assumption question and figure out what answer resonates most with what you already had in mind. So this will make your life much easier and make solving the questions much faster. That being said, another tip to help you break down the passage would be to keep on asking the question, what? This will help you develop the main idea or the core argumentation of the author. So I would suggest and hope that you keep on asking the question, what? What does what mean? Basically asking the author again and again, what do you mean by this particular statement? What is the purpose of this argument? What is the author trying to achieve by this line of argumentation? So asking this question again and again will get you answers and help you engage with the passage really well. That will help you develop the main idea and the core argumentation of the author. Finally, and my last step for breaking down a logical reasoning passage would be, do not mug up facts. Now, this happens a number of times, especially with mathematical or eco-based passages, where a lot of economic concepts, a lot of different terms, matrices are used in the passage, and the students and the readers try and remember all of them or try to understand all of them very keenly. Now, while it's good enough and important for you to have a broad understanding of what these index are, what these different terms are, you don't need to mug it up. Don't make that mistake. Understand that these facts will, in all likelihood, be only asked in direct questions. And for the direct questions, you can easily go back and refer to the passage because you have the facts in front of you. So don't try and mug that up. That'll just waste time. Instead, try and break down the passage into the 5 different aspects like we identified today. I hope this helps you read logical reasoning passages easier and makes your logical reasoning sections attempt much faster. I hope this helped. I'll see you next time.